Alright Rogues, Season 5 HeartSeeker, can it still function? Because it was a huge fan favorite and they kind of nerfed it in some ways, but you can still play it. So we've got a really crazy mix-up build. This is a Tormented Andariel, then we'll do a Pit 100, then we'll do some of the brand new Infernal Hordes mode. So for starters, let's go over kind of like the big part of the update and what you may want to consider playing. So we can run DoomBringer. DoomBringer actually got some crazy buffs for the defensive department. This is an optional item, but it's kind of a really cool thing because it is a mythic unique and you can kind of make a build around getting a bunch of defensive stats. I mean, if you happen to get this greater affix and you masterwork, I mean, we're talking double life, but don't feel like you have to get a greater affix one. I'm just showing you guys in min-max, scenarios, what can you actually expect to see, which is pretty crazy. So you on top of that get some sort of amount of like damage too, and because this build is going to be based off lucky hit, this is all going to be pretty much good stats. You can't really masterwork anything bad except for the lucky hit chance to heal, and even that, it's a usable stat for every single build, but we're going to have another way to get a crazy amount of life as well. So Fist of Fate is going to supply all of our lucky hit chance. If we get a good rolled one, you can get up to 139 lucky hit chance, which is crazy. I have literally 1/3 of that in the gameplay. Like, I just got a bad rolled one, but the other stats were kind of nice on it. It's specifically that your attacks randomly deal like a % damage. It's really hard to get this to roll perfect, so my recommendation would be to just try to trade for one. You don't need, by the way, critical strike chance to roll good on this. It could roll bottom roll on it, don't worry about it. The attack speed roll doesn't really matter either. The two rolls that are important on the affixes are lucky hit chance and that lucky hit chance to apply a crowd control. That one doesn't have to be like perfect or even greater affix. As long as that one just kind of exists, in the middle is okay. But the last stat is actually pretty important too, that your attacks randomly deal a %. Ideally you want that in 250 plus, but the lucky hit chance is 100% the most important stat in the Fist of Fate. Also, we can run Andariel's. Andariel's got a buff, get crazy amounts of attack speed. Again, I'm not expecting you guys to get these perfect rolls on. I'm just showing you guys mentally like how crazy this can be if you happen to masterwork or get a greater affix. Really good stuff indeed. It just has a lot of stuff that works really well with this build. And then on top of that, there is a brand new aspect that is really good. You deal more damage over time for each different crowd control effect that the enemy is suffering from. So this is really good. And then staggered bosses take 80x more damage. It's really good. Craft this on your two-hander and you'll be good to go. And then over on the boots department, there are a couple different options. Pensy Greaves actually got quite a nice buff. So even though this build doesn't utilize crit for like dealing damage, if you want to, there is another way where you can just heavily build into, let's say, the Azarath, and Azarath will actually crit on its damage. There's actually two different things that can crit on Azarath, as well as DoomBringer's ability to crit, but Andariel's won't be able to crit because it's a damage over time. So it also does apply your Umbras, so like the crit strike chance, I mean 16 crit and then another 25x multiplier. That's not too bad. You also get a crazy amount of chill slow potency, which will build up, and that's how I'm freezing enemies quite often. I'm running Penitent Greaves, but there's another pair of boots if you want to that are good as well. You can run Rakan's Wake for crazy resistances, as well as getting extra cooldowns, so you can spam some of your abilities more frequently. And then Azarath can be another great option as well, because Azarath actually has really good stats, giving you all stats, attack speed. Those are two great stats. Cold res is like whatever, it doesn't matter. But that chance to deal that cold damage, as well as that lucky chance to deal damage and freeze enemies is good because again you're crowd controlling. Then you also have this massive amount of cold damage that you can actually beef up over here. And so what makes this build super good is basically those. That's kind of like the newer updates to this build. Now that we know what's kind of newer with this build and why you'd want to play it, let's go ahead and now go over the itemization. And I know that there is a lot of Uber uniques in it. Does this mean that you have to have the Uber uniques for this build? To be honest, you actually can get away without playing them, but it's going to make the build obviously better. Now, if I don't have the Uber uniques, obviously you still need to get some sort of source of damage. So you would not want to get any of the poison glyphs because without Andariel's, what's the point of scaling poison? So to get this build like somewhat up and running, you can run it with specifically the Azarath as well as Fist of Fate just to get that lucky hit like damage, and that will be a way that you can start off with it. But if you're like in the earlier like leveling stage, like you're level 1, you can't play this build. Just play my HeartSeeker leveling build. I'll link it down below, and then you can graduate into this one, as this one is mainly oriented around like endgame content, but you can still again play it without the Uber uniques, but it's going to make it way better, obviously. But there's one Uber unique that you don't really need to play, which is Starless Skies. You technically don't need to play DoomBringer. It just makes the build extra tanky, and it got buffed, so I wanted to throw it in here, and I actually had a lot of fun with it. So as far as the skills go, we are running Smoke Grenade just to activate the brand new totem from the Umbra. You only really need to activate it during elites. The rest of the stuff you can just eliminate so fast it doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, Smoke Grenade, really good. Gonna add way more damage, and the cooldown is basically non-existent if you are hitting a boss with this. Really great stuff. If there's like triple elites, you just activate it, it's off cooldown immediately. Fantastic. And then HeartSeeker, this is our source of damage application. So it doesn't deal direct damage itself, but what happens with HeartSeeker is it will have a very high lucky hit and also like ricochet, so it'll allow you to get even more damage in because it just allows you to have a target, and that's what Umbra really helps out. Then Caltrops, I only really activate this against elites or bosses, and then we're running Flurry because combo points will allow us to get more bonuses with attack speed. You're probably going to reach your attack speed cap, so this honestly is like a optional one. Caltrops is technically kind of optional anyways, until they fix like the bonus that you get with the thing that works on the Paragon board, which I'll mention once we get to it. It's actually busted and it's working not as intended, but this is just the nature of Diablo 4. But the build still runs without the bonus on like crit damage that you're supposed to only get during traps. And it's supposed to be crit, but it doesn't really matter for the build. Anyways, yeah, Flurry is just there to facilitate the application of increased attack speed when we use combo points. But you don't have to play combo points. You can play Inner Sight. Doesn't really matter. And then we're also running Shadow Step. This is going to facilitate our close quarters. Both of these will facilitate it. And then Poison Imbue is utilized not really necessarily to deal like the damage with whatever skill, but it's to activate the Poison Imbue from the Paragon board. There's another bonus here. And then Specialization, we're running combo points, but honestly, you can drop these, and you can even drop Caltrops if you want to. But for the gear, what we're going to be running is Andariel's, and then we're going to be running Tyrael's Might. If you don't have Tyrael's Might, ranks to Dark Shroud, and then if you don't have the Helm, you can just run like a cooldown reduction, you know, Dex, whatever. Just anything that's going to facilitate your survivability. Earlier on, you may need to get resistances too until you get Tyrael's or Rakonoth's. That's another option. And then Fists of Fate over here. This is great because it's going to give you crazy amounts of lucky hit chance, which we already talked about. Then Umbrus, it goes on every single rogue build. Now, it does require you to crit. That's why crit isn't necessarily super bad on this, but if you can, there's a note over here. You want ranks to second win. It doesn't show up, but it will give you shield if you want to spam Flurry and kind of gain some shields. That is an option if you want to. I actually didn't put it in this build. You'll see that I'm not going to be getting any shields, but there's another option if you want to go for that. It can give you some shields, but I really like running HeartSeeker. There's another build with like Pen Shot that will spend resources, but that's almost like another build on its own. So I just wanted to put it there in the note that that's another really great defensive stat if you want to go ahead and get it there, because you will kind of rotate in between using your resources, but Starless Skies will also reduce that. But Starless Skies will give you some more damage, as well as it gives you lucky hit and crit. And while crit isn't really useful, it does help with Umbrus. But that's just a notes over there on the pants. Then Noxious Ice, really good stuff indeed. It's the only thing that's going to give you like, it's a 35x versus like, you can run Concussives or Shared Misery too. That's another great set of options. I'm playing Pentagrams in the gameplay. Run whatever you happen to have a good one of. And then Creeping Death, obviously, really good stuff indeed. And then we want that damage to crowd control, as well as HeartSeeker projectiles to cast twice. Ideally, try to get a high roll on that chance for HeartSeeker projectiles to cast twice, and then once that's at 100, you're good to go. That's really what you're trying to get for on the rolls on the Tempers. The other damage to crowd control, I could roll low rolls. It's not the most important thing with this build. They're running a Rapid Aspect just to get even more attack speed. You want ranks to Alchemic Advantage because it gives you extra lucky hit. You also want lucky hit. Surprisingly, on this amulet, you don't really need to get like Exploit, Malice, and Frigid Finesse. Getting the lucky hit chance is actually like so dang good now that you can get the thing so dang high, especially when lucky hit gets way more value because you are running DoomBringer and you're running Andariel's here, especially if you're running double. The lucky hit chance is just going to be more valuable for you. So it's a lot more beginner friendly. Any other offensive one is great, but to get like triple offensive ones, yeah, it's really expensive, and now you don't really have to do it. And then Ring of Starless Skies can be completely dropped. It just allows you to, if you want to rotate into it, it can give you more damage, but again, choose what you want to in this ring slot. It's not like it's required, but like even if I'm talking about min-maxing, if you want more of a smooth playstyle, you can just drop this. And then Cold Clip. This is what gives us infinite cold imbue, which is great because it can apply all these different bonuses. It'll chill the enemies. And on top of that, you also get more damage to enemies who are chilled or frozen. You get another multiplier, and that'll just again solve a lot of the issues in here. And you can also get a chance to make enemies vulnerable. Also, Cold Imbue can also make enemies vulnerable as well. And then if you want to get smoke grenade size, whatever, that stuff doesn't really matter too much. Just getting damage or crowd control is what you want on the ring. And then for our sword slots or daggers, Umber Crux, it's going to be in every rogue build. And then we have, of course, DoomBringer. Now, as far as other like optional things that we can talk about, if you want to, you can run, again, I already mentioned the Azurath. That is going to be a really, really good other option. If you want to swap out DoomBringer, it will give you more damage. Now, as far as the gems go, Amethyst, Ruby, and then, well, in your armor, you're running the rubies, and then Amethyst in your weapon, and then we have diamonds, or you can run skulls. It doesn't really matter. This is going to res cap you pretty much anyway, so probably skulls in most cases. But if you're earlier on and you don't have enough materials, then obviously you need to get resistances somewhere. Now, as far as the skill tree goes, the first few points are going to be, of course, HeartSeeker. Let's actually make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it, just in case any of you guys are watching on that mobile. All right, so HeartSeeker, we don't need damage with HeartSeeker. We're just using it for the lucky hit chance. I'm just going to make this full screen over here. And then we've got Sturdy, Siphoning Strikes over here. Even though we don't crit very often, I mean, we just have extra points, but you can put it into Stutter Step if you want, but Sturdy definitely. And then we're going to be maxing out Shadow Step just so we can keep on activating it for close quarters. And then we have Enhanced Caltrops. If you want to get the other one, it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Weapon Mastery over here. If you want to run Dash, that's fine. Running Trick Attacks as well. Playing that Daze or Stun because you get those random effects off of the gloves. If you want to put more points into Agile, that's fine. Smoke Grenades is excellent. You definitely want the countering one because it's going to reduce its cooldown by a bunch. Then we're going to be getting the extra crit. Or you can run these Subverting one. It depends what you want. It's kind of up to you, but getting extra crit is totally fine because you need to activate Umbra somehow, right? And then Exploit Malice, just like in every rogue build. And then over here, there is Imbued Skills gain extra critical strike chance. You can get this if you want, but remember, most of the damage comes from your Andariels. And then we also have Deadly Venom over here. We're going to max out all of the ones over here. And then, of course, with the cold, because remember, everything is going to be cold imbued, so cold imbued skills have 40% chance to make enemies vulnerable, so that's really good. And then you get cold imbue skills get extra damage to crowd controlled enemies. Now, honestly, this one could be dropped because your cold imbue skill doesn't really deal damage. I just wanted to go ahead and pick it up. It's up to you if you want to take that one or not. It's just like an extra point there. And then Frigid Finesse, you're going to max that out. If you want to put some points in this, it just activates the freeze a little bit more often. That is up to you. We don't really need to take these, but again, if you wanted to run another skill and you want to rotate into it, you can get some extra barrier. It's not like the worst thing. You don't really need to get any resources with this version. I will make another version. I think I want to try a pen shot variant of this build as well. And then just like every single rogue build, you just put 1 point into Adrenaline Rush and then max out haste, and then close quarters over here is really, really good. And then for our Paragon board, so we're going to be starting out with Fluidity. So Fluidity is going to make it so when we cast an agility skill, we're going to get more damage. Basically, if you just keep your Shadow Step and you keep on activating it, you're going to be good to go. That is this skill over here. If you want to run Dash, that is also an option, but because it has such fast cooldown when you damage an enemy with them, it's going to reduce the cooldown. It's just fantastic for that. So that's how we activate Fluidity, and I just like to use it constantly anyways. And then on our second board, we go into Exploit Weakness with Tracker, so we get more poison. And then we go into Cunning Stratagem with Bane, so more amount of poison damage. And then we go into Cheap Shot with Devious over here, so we're going to be applying lots of crowd control, so it's going to give us way more damage over there. Then we're picking up all this damage of crowd control to facilitate the close quarters, and then we move into Lorana's Instinct board with Control, so more damage to those other enemies. And then we go into Eldritch Bounty, and we get Canny. Canny is going to make it so non-physical damage is going to increase our damage. And then Eldritch Bounty, so this is what I was talking about, where like that's why I run the Imbue skill, Poison Imbue. So when we attack with it, we gain extra resistances, whatever. But what we need it for is the 20% increase at damage for that imbuement's element. So that's kind of cool. Obviously, we also get the cold one, not that we really need it. There's actually another one where if you want to throw in Shadow, it's really not that bad. You can get extra res, and then on top of that, the enemies affected by it can actually take more non-physical damage, which is another option. It just adds another layer to the build, but it's specifically this one. I'm going to go over it because I like to kind of show you guys other things that you can try to mess around with builds. It's this one, enemies affected by Shadow Imbue take increased non-physical damage, which is kind of cool with the build, but this is almost looking at like another build. But the last thing over here, until this gets nerfed, guys, and I'll let you guys know when it gets nerfed, is this Deadly Ambush. So what it does is it makes it so you deal increased crit damage to enemies affected by your trap skills. It's been busted. It was supposed to be fixed, but if it's not fixed, let's still play it. So it just works. Just run it. Obviously, you're going to use caltrops, but it's just any enemies affected by your trap skills will take way more damage. Now, I know we don't scale crit damage, but it just works. It's busted until they fix it. Every rogue build will probably be still running caltrops in that one. But that's going to be the brand new HeartSeeker DoomBringer Andariel's rogue build. And if you want to play Azarath, feel free to go ahead and do so. But let me know, guys, what you think of it. And if there's any suggestions to improve it, as I always like to improve my builds and update them, let me know it down below. But if anything is too confusing, let me know and I'll try to address it maybe in a future video, or I'll just reply to your comment. And the build planner will be linked down below in the pin, or if you're watching this over on TikTok, well, you're just going to have to visit the link in the bio. But everything will be pinned down below for all the timestamps and stuff. But have some fun with this build, guys. Really cool, really smooth build. And keep in mind, all the gameplay you guys saw, just deleting bosses, we are so far from min-maxing. I have 1/3 of this. It's going to be hard to get a really good Fist of Fate, but if you get a God one, I mean, this build is probably going to be one of the top tier builds in the game. So far, I think this is one of the best rogue builds right now in the game. That, Flurry, and also Barrage is really strong as well. I'm going to probably upload another Barrage update, as it's a really fun build, and it can be quite good. And we still have to upload Rapid Fire. Rogue is eating pretty good this season, so if you guys want to see more rogue builds here, subscribe to the bell, and you'll definitely see more rogue and everything, because like this season, there's a lot of fun stuff, man. Anyways, take care, and I'll catch you in the next one. Check the pin for all the links.